Hello, friends. Welcome to Coding Garden with CJ. Welcome to a Q&A session, a coding Q&A session. So you might have questions, and I might have answers. Welcome, everyone. Thanks for being here. Yo, 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 yo. What's up, Milky Death? If you go to Vox, it's vox.coding.garden. That will bring up this website, and you can ask questions in the Twitch chat. So if you do !ask followed by your question, it will appear here. And you can also vote on other people's questions. So if you see a question here that you like, you can do ! upvote followed by the question number, and it will appear here. You can also submit ideas or just a general submission, but mainly this is for asking questions. You can also comment on others. And what's up, Impy? Yeah, so it's a great question that I did not address. I didn't clear the database, so all the questions are still there, but I changed it so that it only displays the last 7 days of questions, mainly because it was getting a little bit out of hand. So basically, if a question hasn't been answered in the last 7 days, it'll need to be asked again, which is unfortunate, I know, but we typically only answer questions for people that are actually here anyways, so there's that. It's Ryan says, a day without your stream feels like a week. Well, thank you, it's Ryan. Yeah, so if you have questions, ask them again. And if you're new here, thanks for being here. This is the Coding Garden. We write code, and it's mainly we write code. We hang out. We have a good time. Let's play the drop game. So if you do ! drop, and hey, Adamante, thank you for that 6-month sub, which reminds me, I totally forgot, Roger Voth with the 10 gifted. Thank you very much, Roger Voth. And they had a comment. Let me read their comment. And thank you, Julian, for those 100 bits. Here we go. Roger Voth says, I just wanted to thank you for everything you do, all your streams and guidance, and your awesome personality. I just received a promotion yesterday to junior developer, and I believe it's in no small part to your channel. Well, congratulations. I guess I've maybe helped in some way. I don't know how much I've helped. I mean, I'm just here. You're there, but I'm proud of you. That's great. Congrats. Can we get some hearts in the chat for Roger Voth? Coding heart. We got a promotion. All right. Yes. If you're new here, let's play the drop game. I mean, even if you're not new here, but we'll do the drop game. So if you do ! drop in the chat like that, and if you say drop me, if it's your first time, just do drop me. That's gonna drop your avatar, whatever it may be. So that's mine, which just got yeeted off of the screen. That'll happen. But if your snowflake makes it to the tree, your name will show up on the screen. And Aztec Consulting, thank you for that sub. Happy to continue to support you and the work you're doing. Oh, thank you, Aztec. Much appreciated. Okay. Hey, the coding show. You really inspire me, and that's why I started my own coding show. Apparently, I'm just giving out all kinds of inspiration, but that's awesome. And Aces, thank you for that tier 2 resub. Tier 2. Yeah. Would I rather fight 100 duck-sized horses or 1 horse-sized duck? I'll get to that question. So, the nice thing about hey, Statty. Thank you for the 100 bits. The nice thing about the website is people can vote on questions, and but questions that people have voted on will bubble up to the top. So you can run this command to upvote someone else's question. We are showing subscribers at the top, but I usually jump around, so it's not just all sub questions. Okay, I read that as like, what's the most hilarious smell you came across? I was like, that's a weird question. Code smell? Oh, just someone not using good variable names. It's not hilarious. Honestly, it's annoying. Like naming every variable temp. It is, so being dropped into someone else's code base, it is surprisingly hard to just figure out what the code is doing if they have bad variable names. And so that's a really bad code smell. Name your variables. Temp1, temp2, exactly. Well, it's like this person's code just has just temp all over the place. Yeah. Oh well. Let's say hi to everybody. If just say hi. I don't think we're gonna filter it. We're gonna say hi for about a minute or so, and I will acknowledge you. I'll just say hi right back. Yeah, I saw that plugin that got released. And hello, Unanswered Dope and Limotes and Jay Gonzalez and Sir Time and Roaming and Brainless Box and Terrazoid and Huguin Hoda and Code Flavor and Miguel and DC's and Pete Pal and Awaited and Clyde and Dewan Shinthif and Prasad and Brandon. How's it going? And hello, Joe Mama and Chris, Tim 1, Tim 2, Tim 3. Hello, Alyssa and JCC Dev. One day I'll make it to the tree. One day. So there's a 90-second timeout. So you can keep trying all stream. Maybe eventually you'll make it there. And hello, Capure, and Ziaf, and Legendary, and Mr. Ben Coder, and Burvy, and Akarboosh, and Refactorer, and Salty Sea Cow, and Hems Code. Yeah, I saw that one too. It seems like it's for the memes. It looks interesting. And hello, Thon. My week has been pretty good. Honestly, my week has been consumed by Pokemon cards. So, and hello, Hecka, welcome to the show. What's up, Perms Code? How did I build that chat overlay? It's all your questions will be answered in the frequently asked questions. So if you go to the frequently asked questions, there's specifically a page in here. So this thing that describes what all these things on my screen are. So if you click on that, it describes like the bots that are running, the overlays, the chat overlay, and thank you, Ivo, for the 100 bits. And it links to the streams, the VODs of the streams where I built them, and it links to the code. I'll say the code is messy. You're more than welcome to use it, but it is messy. But there is a Twitch chat, which is created by some of the mods of Coding Garden. They also have other accomplishments in the world except for being my mods, but that is one fact. They are mods at my channel. And this is usable by anyone, so there are quite a few streamers that actually use this one. And I think it's kind of obvious, but it is it's inspired by my chat overlay, but it's usable by other people. It doesn't require like dev configuration. They have a bunch of other features too, so check them out if you want something like this on your stream. Okay. Now we're a minute behind hellos. Can we catch up? What's up, Benny and Quinar and Rogue Soul and Bimsicle and the Ims and Oskul and Hecka and Beanie and Coding 60 Plus and Strid and Sequel Gorcher. I once removed almost 1 million line of duplicate calls because the developer didn't know how to use a function. That's unfortunate. Like, hey, Ivo, thank you for more bits, Ivo. So here's the like, people like learn, we get better, right? But for a code base to reach that level of like redundancy is just crazy. Like, I don't know. Hopefully they learn from it. Hello again just for the meme. But it makes it harder if you say hello again. Just say hello once, not twice. What's up, Oskul and Mr. Pie and Sairi and Alka says fact. Hello, Alka. Shout out to Alka. They've been streaming Advent of Code every day. I haven't been able to tune in. I think I just finished writing a big project. But definitely check them out. And hello, oh, Refactor, thank you for the bits. Yeah, and Coding Show, you're welcome to use my code. It's somewhat messy, and there are some things that are specific to my channel that you would need to change, but it's open source. It has the MIT license on it. Yeah, so steal it. Do whatever you want with it. Turn it into a business if you want to. And hello, Razorsun and Herm's Code again, and Jerbin and Robalin. And Heretic. Sometimes I get bored with coding, but then I watch your streams and I get super pumped up to just bang the keyboard. Nice. That's good to hear. And hello, Mod. And Razorsun and JCC Dev. Oh, yeah, congrats. There you are. Hello, Eddie Devs. And thank you, ACs, for that focus mode. If we have like a question that requires that I write code, we'll use this focus mode. And hello, Fusenato. Chris Guy says, when was the last time you pulled your hair out over bugs due to tail recursion? I'll be honest, I don't use recursion that much. So, I mean, almost the only time I use recursion is if we're doing like an algorithms thing here. But for the most part, in my code, I don't think recursively. So, I mean, pretty much anything that can be implemented with recursion can be implemented. I mean, really, anything that can be implemented with loops can be implemented with recursion, and vice versa. So, I typically just loop. I don't know. Hello, Wigsicle. 7 modules with 50,000 calls, and it was about 7 lines. Hello, Burvy. How's it going? Automagic. What's on today's menu? Well, today's menu is brought to you by the viewers of Coding Garden. So whatever people have decided to ask is what's on the menu. Oh, you're gonna deliver a project. Nice. Good luck, Alka. Sir Time, I found you randomly a few days ago and love to hear your VODs while progressing in my own Discord bot and finally made it to the live stream. Nice, thanks for being here. A few other people have mentioned they just like put me on in the background. I guess it's kind of like co-working. I guess my voice isn't annoying, so you can leave it on. I don't know. How long will the Q&A last? I'm going to be streaming for roughly an hour and a half. However, whenever I get to the next question, so you'll notice after a second, these things turn gray like this. So before I answer a question, I'll tell you a command to run. So that way we can make sure that you're here when I'm actually answering your question. And Thanvir. Yeah, we're really close to 100K on YouTube. You're absolutely right. We're at 99,600, something like that. 99,700. It's happening, everyone. We'll be there by New Year's. We're definitely going to do a New Year's celebration live stream on YouTube. I think. So we're going to celebrate New Year's and we're going to celebrate 100K subs. So look out for that. I'm contemplating, though, I might stream on YouTube, but just tell everyone to use Twitch chat instead so we can keep using all my overlays. Would I choose to learn C++ or Rust? Probably Rust, just because it's newer and shinier. That said, I mean, C++ is, I mean, there's so many things built on C++. Like JavaScript engines are written in C++. I don't know. But what's up, Greg? And thank you, Hecka. Cam resolution is low today. Yeah, I'll agree with that. Why did I cut the bun? Oh, I dyed my hair green and then the hair got fried and I wanted to get rid of it. When was the last time you used algorithms like graphs or search in a real project? I can't mention a real project, but I would say like advent of code, which are kind of just like algorithms problems anyways. So never. I have never done this in the real world. It's all theoretical. In the real world, you're using built-in functions that do those things. You're never really, I mean, I speak for myself, right? I'm sure people in the real world do implement graphs and searches and stuff like that, but I specifically don't. The Ackermann function cannot be implemented with loop. I haven't heard of it. Oh, thank you, Harms Code. Nice. All right. So, oh yeah, we're 300 away from 25K followers here on Twitch. We're coming up in the world. People are recognizing us, which is great. NPM packages came bundled with pictures of Guy Fieri. Yeah, I think I saw that a while back, like a few months ago. Cool. Oh, thank you for the sub, Zamar Plays. And thank you, it's Ryan. And hey, Datrius, thank you for the sub, the Twitch sub. I think they were mentioning a YouTube sub. What do I recommend? Gulp, Webpack, or Parcel? Parcel is zero config, really easy to just get up and going. Webpack, you can potentially do zero config, but you usually need a config, and pretty much no one uses Gulp anymore. You still can, but these days people are using Webpack, Parcel. There's a few others. I am doing advent of code, but I haven't done like the last 2 days. All right. Here we go. Soon, with all this fame, you'll need to get many leather-bound books. Wait, what? Leather-bound books? I don't understand the reference. And hello, designer and geek. Welcome to the show. Let's answer a question. So, if you have asked a question, in the chat, you can do ! here, and your question will bubble up to the top. And hello, Jay Gonzalez. Thank you for the 99 bits. First question comes from Limotes, a subscriber. And their question is, have you ever consumed an external streaming API, the kind where you keep a socket open and data gets fed through it as it becomes available? I need to consume one such API in Node and had trouble finding a library that can handle that. Socket.io client seems to need the server to be built with Socket.io, but I have no idea what the server's built with. Limotes. We actually did this very recently. I mean, I'm just... This is not planned. This was not staged, anyone. This was not staged. So, and this live stream is actually premiering on YouTube. The one where we did this. It's really long. Because so this is like a 6-hour stream. But the Lichess API specifically does this. And we had never heard. I mean, I had never heard of an API like that. Few people mentioned it, but they actually use new line delimited JSON. So you basically you make a single GET request, and then that chess, like Libre chess. I know I said like chess, but you make a single GET request, and then the server just never ends the response. It just stays open, and that's actually how they stream new chess moves to the client. And I can show the code really quick, because we decided to. I mean, there are a few libraries out there that will handle it. It's not server sent events. No, I don't. No, it's not. That's a different thing. It works in a similar way, but I do not believe it to be server sent events. Yeah. Let's look at the code, and I'll show you what we're doing. And so it greatly depends on the API that you're consuming, because it's not WebSockets. Like, WebSockets is a specific standard, and there's a WebSocket API built into the browser. This is not WebSockets. It's you make a GET request, and then the server just never closes the response. It basically leaves it open forever, and it streams the data. The particular API we were talking to was new line delimited JSON. Where'd it go? Lichess Twitchbot. And actually, I'm gonna show you a really quick example in Insomnia. So one like, it was totally new to me last time. I was like, I didn't know APIs actually do this. But let's see. Yeah. So I think, do I have the? Yeah, this should be good. So check it. I have here Insomnia open, and I'm gonna do a GET request to this Lichess API endpoint. And what will happen, as long as I'm authed, is it just sits there. You will in an HTTP client like Insomnia, you will never see the response. And I mean, I don't think Insomnia supports streaming APIs like this, but basically, like, we tested it last time. It stayed open for like 15 minutes before we closed it. So you literally make a GET request, and then the server just never closes the socket. Hey, what's up, Jenna? Thanks for being here. So yeah, well, actually, let's just leave this running. You'll see that it just never responds. And to look at the code, look at my commit message, hacky code for hacky people. It's a little bit messy, but I can show you the general idea. And hey, Fight, thank you for that 8-month resub. And actually, we created a nice little helper function that you potentially could use, though there are libraries out there that work with it. We created this stream URL function. So here's what it does. We create an event emitter, and that way the consuming code can just listen for events, like basically my client code here. I have some other code that calls stream URL, passes in a URL like this, and then it just says on message. So it's basically the consuming code of this function. It's kind of like WebSockets, but it's in the client. So yeah, create an event emitter. And then we have this async function. We create a cancellation source because we're using Axios, and potentially, if I don't want to listen to that stream anymore, I want to close the connection, so we do that. We then do a GET request to the URL. We say the response type is a stream. And then we're using an async iterable. So, I mean, typically when you make a GET request, you just do an await on it, and then you immediately, well, not immediately, but after it's done, you get back the response. In this case, response.data will have the latest data, but then it'll just wait for the next chunk to come back from the server. And in this case, each chunk is actually one little JSON object. So each chunk is a JSON object. We have some code here that's like making sure that if there are any new lines, we put it together and then parse it. But this is basically looking at each chunk coming back from this stream. And then we do stuff with it. So we have a text decoder, splits it on new lines, and then for each one that it found, it parses it as JSON. And then with this event emitter we created, we emit it out. And so the consuming code, for example, is this. So whenever we start a game on Lichess, we have a stream URL. So we're listening for a stream on that specific game ID. So this is that function that I just showed you. We call it, that creates this event emitter called game, and then we can just do game on event. An event is an event name that we are emitting here. So this is the code I used to do it. It's a little bit hacky. You can find libraries out there that are built for like new line delimited JSON. Yeah. Is this sort of long polling? Not exactly, because long polling, the server actually does end the response, and then after the server ends the response, the client knows to just open up the request again. So it's never closed. So so in long polling is basically kind of how we did real-time stuff on the web before things like WebSockets existed. Let me see if I can find an image of long polling. Because long polling, the server will end the response. Yeah, let's look at this. Yeah, and so it's basically the client makes a request, and that request just stays open on the server, and let's say the time that request is going to stay open is like 30 seconds, maybe a minute, and if the server has something for the client within that amount of time, it responds to it. It's just a regular plain old HTTP response. The client then knows to open back up and make another request again, and then wait for the server to send a response. Now, if the connection is about to time out and there is no new event for the client, the server will just respond with like no data, and then the client will open it back up again. So long polling is similar in that the client is kind of just, the client has to ask for things. But in what do you call it? In this example, it's really just two arrows. You have one initial request, and then this arrow is kind of like, it just sends a little bit of data at a time over the same arrow. It's not a different arrow, it's the same arrow. If that's a good way to describe it. Cool, but hopefully that helps out. Thanks for the question, Limotes. Alrighty, if you are here, and you have asked a question, type exclamation mark here in the chat and it'll bubble up. I have tried Next.js. Have I? Yes, I have. It's cool. It's cool. Did I miss anything else? I didn't watch the Chrome Dev Summit. And hello, Tron. Welcome to the show. Thoughts on the horror show that is TypeScript and React? I actually use TypeScript and React at work. It's not that bad. I'll say the main reason I like it is because, I mean, with TypeScript, it's like code that documents itself. So if another developer comes along, it's easy to see what the interfaces are and how things work. But yeah, so. And hello, Sir Sapig. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Welcome. Okay, let's keep answering questions. Let's do a non-sub question. This one comes from Unanswered Dop. What tech do you recommend to develop desktop apps? Good afternoon. Hey, hey, hey. Let's answer this question. So, you got options, is what I'll say. So, first of all, let's talk about the options before I talk about what I would recommend. Because, honestly, what I would recommend is to use what you're comfortable with and what seems more accessible to you. Because there are certain options where you really don't have to if you already know web development, you actually don't have to learn anything new. There are other options where you would have to learn new things. Cool. And this question comes from the Unanswered Dop. What's up, Julian? I started a new throwaway app in JavaScript last week, and I'm already wishing that I started it with TypeScript. But, I mean, if it was a throwaway app, then maybe you don't need TypeScript? I don't know. And hello, Avinaba. Welcome to the show. Okay, first of all, if you're in the web dev world, you have what I would call hybrid native. Let's take a quick stretch. Yeah. I think really in any project that is going to last longer than a month, it probably makes sense to use TypeScript. But also, TypeScript is more work. Like, you have to admit, objectively, TypeScript requires more code. It requires you to really think about the things that you're creating. Whereas with JavaScript, you can kind of just do whatever you want. And I like that. So I don't know. I've thought about playing Cyberpunk 2077. I don't know, though. Okay, hybrid native. I don't know if that's the right term for it, but basically what I mean is a web shell running as a desktop app. And for that, you have Electron. Probably the most popular way to do this is Electron. A lot of people complain that it uses too much memory because basically every Electron app has its own embedded version of Chromium, which is the open source version of Chrome. VS Code is built on that technology. I think they might have forked from it at some point because VS Code was based off of Atom, the Atom editor, and the Atom editor team are the people that initially created Electron. So this is actually a web view that's rendering these elements. This, my chat overlay over here, I bet you didn't know I could drag it around like this. This is actually an Electron window, and it just uses web technologies. What else? Slack is an Electron app. Discord is an Electron app. Basically, what it allows you to do is just use the web development that you know and love. You could write it with React. You could write it with Vue. You could write it with vanilla JavaScript. Anything that works in a web browser, you can use that for an Electron app. But Electron provides APIs that allow your code that looks like front-end code to potentially access the native device and do native type things. And there's a bridge for that. You might have heard the terms like IPC renderer and things like that. That's all that thing. So Electron's one choice for that. Another one is NWJS, Node WebKit. A lot of people say that Node WebKit is a lot more performant than Electron, but it's a very similar idea. You basically have a Chromium window, and that's what's running, but you can use web code. Yeah. Oh yeah, Postman, Insomnia, they're all Electron. So Node WebKit, a lot of people are like, hey, use that instead of Electron. Those are all I know of in this category. Yeah, so that's a different category. So I'm gonna call that native UI with web tech. And in that category is Vito, which is based off of, so I'll talk about Vito, and also, which is based off of libui, which is a cross-platform library for building UIs. It's native. I think they wrote it in C++ or C, but people have built bridges for it. So you have Vito, you have Proton native, which is React. This is Vue. But before we move on to that, does anyone know of any other project that's similar to Electron or Node WebKit? Wait, they're all Electron? Always have been. Yeah. And there are a lot of Flutter for desktop would be in this category. I would put it in this category. C# is like I would call it native UI kits. Electron.net. I haven't heard of that one. Hey Bob, welcome to the show. Electron.net. I might have seen that one, but there's another way to go about it. So this is embedded Chromium. There's also like a hybrid native which uses system web view. And there's a few different things that do that. So a lot of people complain that this uses a ton of memory because it's basically its own Chromium instance. There are frameworks out there that allow you to just use the system web view, meaning the Mac operating system has a way of creating a web view, and it's based on the same thing that Safari uses, but you can actually just write a native app that has a web view embedded inside of it. Similarly, Windows allows you to do this, and so does Linux. So these solutions allow your code to be cross-platform. They let you write web code, but then they basically just choose and use the system web view. But yeah, C# WPF is a native UI kit. You've also got what are all the like C++ ones? You've got Qt. Yeah, I've never heard of Reverie. Let me look at that one. Yeah, well, like Java Swing is, I think, I don't know. I'm really outdated. Yeah, GTK, that's another one. Java Swing, I think, was a thing, and then Java FX. I haven't heard of Springboard. Oh, and then yeah, Xamarin's another cool one. So Xamarin is cross-platform, and you write it in C#. And then there's what was I gonna say? Oh yeah, C# WinForms. these are two different Windows technologies for building desktop apps: WPF and WinForms. Yeah, so we have Flutter under native UI. Let me look up Reverie because I've never heard of that. The Reverie. Native high-performance cross-platform desktop apps built with Reason. What the heck is Reason? Oh, it's a TypeScript. It's like a functional TypeScript. Okay. Today, Electron is one of the most popular tools. So yeah, it like 90s vibes for WinForms, but you'll be surprised the number of apps that are still built with WinForms. Delphi, Kappa. Ionic, if they do have a desktop app option, it's just using Electron. Oh yeah, and then a bunch of stuff that I know nothing about. So there's like a way of using Python, CGUI. I know nothing about those. Okay. Your apps are compiled to native code with Reason OCaml with instant startup. Reverie is like Flutter in that it doesn't use native widgets. This means more work for us, but also means we have a more predictable functionality cross-platform. Interesting. So this would be under the category of like native UI with web tech, because Reverie is kind of like it's a JavaScript type language. Oh yeah, and then yeah. So if you're just building a straight up Mac application, you could use Swift UI. Cool. There's a ton of other ones that we could list, but they all fall into these different categories. So you have hybrid native, that is, you literally have an embedded web browser that ships with every distributed desktop app. You have hybrid native. Let me see if I can never find the libraries for hybrid native. What WebView? Does anyone know what one might be called? Web shell? Let's search for Electron alternative. Chromium embedded framework? Is that a thing? Have not tried it. Let's look it up. For embedding Chromium within another application. So I'm guessing this is probably what Electron does to get that going. But Electron alternatives. DeskGap. DeskGap is the one that I was thinking of. So DeskGap is similar to Electron in that you can use web technologies, but there is no embedded Chromium. So instead of embedding the entire Chromium, depending on where your app is running, it just uses the native web view. So on Mac, it uses the WebKit rendering engine. On Windows, it uses Trident. On Linux, it uses WebKit. Basically, it is able to just launch a native UI window that has a web view inside of it, and then your code runs inside of there. Yeah, this is saying Internet Explorer 11 is required. Weird. If you want to get it working on Windows. And honestly, like, this also falls into the category of cross-platform, because you may or may not want something that's cross-platform. But regardless, yeah, so DeskGap is one option for hybrid native. And then, what's another one? Neutralino. I was looking into Node GUI the other day. And actually, I mean, honestly, you could just take a look at this this thing here. What about a progressive web app? Well, it's not a desktop app. Build lightweight cross-platform desktop apps with JavaScript, HTML, and CSS. It's easier than you think. In an Electron and Node WebKit, you have to install Node and hundreds of dependencies. Neutralino offers a lightweight and portable SDK, which is an alternative. Okay, so Neutralino would be similar to what I'm talking about here for DeskGap. Node GUI. I think this uses GTK. Oh, Qt. It uses Qt5. And then Electrino, an experimental desktop runtime. A Hello World app using Electron takes 115 megabytes, but in Electrino, it's only 167 kilobytes. So I think Electrino does a similar thing to DeskApp. Okay, I think that's enough. That's enough of a list. Electrino, yeah. But I would say probably if you're a web developer, probably the most popular way to do it is Electron. After that, Node WebKit. These solutions are newer and potentially don't have as many things built into them as these, but you potentially have a smaller bundle size. Some interesting things to check out are Vito and Proton Native. So there's this library called libGUI, or libUI, which itself allows you to build cross-platform applications in C. So you could build a desktop app that runs on Windows, Mac, and Linux, but you would be coding in C. It's a bit lower level. These two things, Vito and Proton Native, use a Node libUI, which is basically an interop between libUI and Node.js, and they allow you to write desktop applications that where you have Vue components and you have React components. So these two are comparable to like NativeScript or React Native, but for desktop. And Jorn the Dev, thank you for that 4-month resub. And then there's also Flutter. In Flutter, you're using the language Dart. It's technically native, but it's like rendering to a canvas. And then we just found that Reverie thing. And these are all options for mostly like cross-platform desktop apps. So you could write the desktop app once, and then it will work on all different platforms. With native UI kits, typically they only work on the platform that you're building them for. So like C# WPF and C# WinForms, for the most part, are just Windows. You could potentially build a WinForms app and then get it working with Wine on Linux. I don't know if WinForms is supported on Mac yet, but that's the things you have to deal with native kits. Xamarin actually is cross-platform. So I believe. I know their mobile stuff is cross-platform. I actually don't know. I'm going to scratch that. You'll have to look it up. But Xamarin allows you to use C# to build... it is. Okay, so I'm going to bring it back. So Xamarin allows you to use C# to build cross-platform apps. So you have one code base that could run on Mac, Windows, and Linux. Qt is like native C++, and GTK is C++. SwiftUI is Swift. Java is Java. Swing and FX are two different UI things. And then there's ways of doing it with Python I'm not familiar with. But... your question was, what tech do I recommend? I would say if you're already a web developer, Electron is probably the easiest. It's extremely easy to just start an app and build a desktop app. And just to show you, let's make one. Let's make a quick Electron app. What should the Electron app do? Give me some ideas. Oh yeah, well, Mono, I thought really wasn't a thing anymore because of the .NET Core. The thing is, at the end of the day, if we're just doing, yeah, I mean, at that point we're just building a web app, because I'll show you how we do this. Build a new VS Code. r/lightbulb. Are these just ideas? Cool, but this is how easy it is to get started with an Electron desktop app. You clone their starter repo, go into it, install dependencies. A weather app tells you the time in the exact opposite location of the globe. Is there an API that will give me the exact opposite latitude, longitude? Distributing an Electron app on Chocolatey. So I've never used Chocolatey. Chocolatey is kind of like Brew, but it's for Windows, but I've never really used it. Okay, so dependencies installed, and then we just have to do npm start. Ta-da! I've got a desktop app. So you can see that this desktop app says it's using Node 12, Chromium 87, and Electron 11. And the cool thing about this is it's just web technology. So you can open up the dev tools. Let me see if I can dock this. Yeah, you can open up the dev tools here, and you can inspect it, because it actually is just Chromium, right? So This is our Electron desktop app. I'll show you the code really quick, because at the end of the day, and for all intents and purposes, it's just a web app. So you have your main, which actually creates the Electron window. So what we're looking at here is node.js code. We bring in the Electron library. We create what's called a browser window. That's the thing that we saw pop up. We give it a size, and we tell it here to load the index.html file. So that's going to pop up the window, and then it's going to load this file here. And so this is just a regular HTML file like you're used to, but you can see here that it's loading this renderer.js file. And if we take a look at renderer, renderer does nothing. The one we would want to look at is preload. So preload is the script that runs as your app is booting up, and preload has full access to Node.js and all the things that you could do with Node.js, like accessing the file system or accessing installed Node modules. Preload has access to all of that. And then your renderer mainly just has access to the web browser. So there's like some separation of concerns for security purposes. There is a way to like interop them, but that's why they're separated. And basically in the preload is where we have access to all this Node.js stuff. So like what's the version of Chrome, Node, and Electron, different things like that. And so this just runs when the web page loads, has access to all that Node stuff. So all of Node.js APIs are available in the preload process. It has the same sandbox as a Chrome extension. And that allows us to get things like the Node version and stuff like that. Ta-da! I'm actually not going to put anything in this. I mean, what I'll show you really quick is what I could do is go in here to index.html, and then we can add an H1 that says Coding Garden. that's all I'm going to do. But now if we go back to the Electron app and refresh it, now we have a desktop app that just says Coding Garden. I'm done. We got to answer more questions. I'm not going to touch that anymore. But that is how easy it is to get started with Electron. So that's if you're a web person, that's why I recommend using Electron. Node WebKit, it's going to be the exact same thing. Clone a repo, and then just start writing web stuff. You will have to learn about the render process and the background process, but easy enough. Hybrid native, so Descap, Neutralino. From what I've seen, all of these projects are like very new, but for the most part, it works in a similar way to what I just showed you. And then these are interesting. I'll show you Vudo or Vudo. It's probably Vudo. So this allows you to build desktop apps using Vue.js. Now, you can use Vue.js with Electron because it's just running in a web browser, but this is kind of like React Native in that you're writing code that looks like Vue.js. Inside of your template, you literally have a window component and a box component. And you have like a form component. So this is code that could be inside of your Vue template. But at the end of the day, that code gets compiled into native UI elements using libui. I don't know if it supports Vue Router. You'd have to read about it a bit. I would say maybe, but I don't really know. The thing to think about is because you have to use these elements, you can't use web elements. So you couldn't have a div or a p tag or the things that you're used to. You have to specifically use the components that are provided, like this. So it's a little bit different, but the syntax and development experience is similar if you're used to Vue. And then same thing with Proton Native. If you're used to React, this lets you write React components and use their native React or their built-in React components, which render native stuffs. Cool. And then for all these other ones, you would have to know that specific language and that specific platform. All right, we're gonna move on. That was a fun little tour of all the world of desktop development. There's also a whole bunch of stuff that I didn't mention. That's just the stuff that I'm familiar with. So yeah, let's keep going. If you have asked a question, type !mark here in the chat. It'll bubble up. What do I think about JetBrains? WebStorm. It's fine. It's a full-fledged IDE, which requires a bit more to install. And I mean, so I've used like, I guess I have used WebStorm. Typically, like the startup times are a bit slower than like VS Code, which can like start up instantly. I like the plugin ecosystem of VS Code, which is why I use that. People have made arguments about like Microsoft is dominating the editor ecosystem by giving away VS Code for free. I don't really care about that. VS Code actually is really fast. Like, I don't know if you're using the latest version, but they've added optimizations where like you can open up a gigabyte text file and it knows not to load the whole thing into memory, and works well enough. The timeout, I think, is 5 minutes for the here command. Cool. Andrew says, can I help you with CMake? Maybe? That would be a fun little detour here. We don't really usually do native stuff. Do you have like a GitHub repo? Or do you want to share your screen? What do you want to do, Andrew? I haven't used... Oh, this is a joke. I laughed. X.io. Who just said this? Noodles. Have you ever used X.io to share your code with a stream on the fly? Is it basically I run it in the terminal and it like streams my files to like a URL? Looks sus. All right, if you've asked a question, type exclamation mark here. It'll bubble up to the top. Salutations, Delta. Thanks for being here. Here comes a question from Roaming. What are the differences between making a relational database versus a non-relational? I mean, I just think in relations even when I do a non-relational. Yeah, I mean, I think the fact is that the majority of the things we do are typically relational and can be represented in a relational database. Now I saw that you would like curl it and then it like copies the files. I'm not gonna do it right now. But hey, Zapak, thank you for that raid. Welcome, Raiders. You have arrived at the Coding Garden. Hey, Cheo, thank you for that resub. And hello, Izzy, with that Learns with Leon emote. Okay. Yeah, what are we doing? we're the Coding Garden. We answer questions, we build apps, we have fun, we hang out. Today, we're answering coding questions. So if you go to vox.coding.garden, you can see all the questions that people have asked, and then there's some commands you can run in the chat to ask a question or upvote, different things like that. But yeah, I think the real question here is like, what's the use case for a non-relational database? And I think it comes down to there's a few reasons. For one, if you are dealing with unstructured data, like if you're potentially importing data from some other system and it's not consistent, like sometimes it's missing properties or sometimes it has extra properties. Non-relational databases and like schemaless databases are really great for that because you don't have to do a lot of upfront work cleaning the data and figuring out what is the schema and then fitting that data into your specific schema. So it's nice to be able to just like throw something in a MongoDB document store and not have to predefine the schema. However, not all things should be built that way. So typically, if you have things that are related, it makes a lot of sense to use a relational database because a relational database enforces those relations at the database level. It basically prevents you from creating relations that would be invalid or inserting data that would be invalid. The other thing about relational databases is you typically have to define your schema ahead of time. So you basically say, this is my table, these are the columns that it has, this is the types of those columns, and that's the data that will fit in here. If that ever changes, like if you need to add a new field, you need to actually adjust the schema of the database. Whereas if in a non-relational and a schemaless database, you don't have to do that. You can just throw anything you want in there. Some people say that like a non-relational database potentially scales a bit more, but you can scale relational databases as well. So I mean, there might be some cases, but yeah, there's that. And also, if it's a prototype or if you're just lazy, it makes a lot of sense to use a non-relational database. That's what I'll say. But for the most part, in the real world, we use SQL databases. I mean, there are use cases for everything. And I'll say, in my experience, I typically just use relational like SQL databases for everything. Just use an Excel just Excel sheet or an Access database. If NoSQL is like that in your mind, I wonder how you think about serverless. Do you disagree with my description of NoSQL? I'm happy to hear what you think about it. And really, like, what I was mentioning about it, like, being schemaless or just, like, throwing data into it, like, that's one benefit. Not all people use it that way. Like, they're actually, in the latest version of MongoDB, and, like, that's the non-relational database that I think of. In the latest version of MongoDB, you actually can create schemas now. So you could enforce structure at the database level. But typically, like, in the Node.js world... Yeah, right. And so I'm thinking about, and that I'm specifically thinking about a document store. I have worked with Cassandra, and to me it was weird because you have to define your schema ahead of time. So I'm talking about a schemaless document store. You're right. There are other non-relational databases that do require you to create a schema. Yeah. What is a document store? It's a type of database that stores things as documents instead of as tables. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I think that's it. But what I was going to mention, in Node.js, you typically see people using MongoDB with Mongoose. And Mongoose is a Node.js JavaScript library that allows you to create schemas and allows you to create relationships. But all of those schemas and relationships are enforced at the application level, meaning it's enforced in your JavaScript, your Node.js JavaScript code. It's not enforced in the database. So, yeah. For the most part, probably you should just use a SQL database. A non-relational database for the... Yeah, and so there's a few different things here. I'm saying non-relational, but there's also NoSQL, which isn't exactly non-relational because you can technically have relations. I don't know. Mongoose versus Monk. Monk is just easy to nice and quick to prototype. Typically in larger projects, I'd use Mongoose. Yeah, and so there are other non-relational databases like key value stores. Yeah, so I'm specifically talking about a document store, which I think is what Roaming was getting at. Cool. Thank you for your question, Roaming. Let's keep going. If you've asked a question, type exclamation mark here. It'll bubble up to the top. But even so, like in a key value store like Redis, you really wouldn't put relational data in that. You could put it all in a text file. Yeah. All right, let's answer a sub-question. This one comes from Akar. Would I consider making some ASP.NET streams, especially after .NET 5 and WebAssembly got released? What's your opinion on that anyway? I've talked about it in the past. We just do a lot of JavaScript here. I'm not opposed to it. I just have to find the time. The thing is, like, I know JavaScript. I know the JavaScript ecosystem really well. So anything that was like ASP.NET related, I'd have to spend time learning. I could learn on stream. I did ASP.NET many years ago, like 5-6 years ago. So I wouldn't be starting from scratch, but it's just not really what I do. I would consider it, though. I'll say that. That's my answer. I would consider it. I just don't know when. Gotta find the time. What is a static site generator versus a static site renderer? A static site generator will generate static files. It will basically create files that can be hosted on a static web server, meaning you don't need a server running Node.js or a server running PHP or a server running Python to render the content. It's all rendered ahead of time into static files. So a static site generator typically will generate just a bunch of HTML files that have all of the data and text embedded into them. And then those static files can just be put on a static server. So like surge.sh, you could FTP upload them to an Apache server or an Nginx server, and it can just literally serve those static files. There's no logic required to serve those up. A server-side renderer, on the other hand, requires some sort of process running on the server. So when a client makes a request to the server can decide how the HTML will be returned and rendered to the client. So there's actually some logic happening before that HTML is sent back to the client. Thanks, and let's do a quick stretch. So yeah, server-side renderer means that you need a server that's running some backend language that's actually going to be rendering the content, whereas static site generator, you render everything ahead of time. It's just static files, and those can be uploaded to a static server. Hopefully that helps. Question from Bjorn the Dev. How would you create a Node.js service which scrapes a couple of house rental websites every morning and then returns an email the new listings? For example, to run nonstop on a Raspberry Pi, how would you structure the project? You've probably seen me do scraping stuff here before, but let me see if there's been some comments. Let me catch up over here. In Vox Populi, what's the difference between the questions in the purple and the gray background? Purple are people that are here right now. Gray are people that are potentially not here. If you, when I'm answering a question, you should do exclamation mark here because it'll bubble up to the top. But after 5 minutes, the questions will turn gray. Do I like to use TypeScript for the backend with ORM like TypeORM or SQLize? I feel like ORM tools are not solid for JavaScript. It's my personal opinion from C# and ORMs. I'll tell you my preferred one. It's called Objection, and it's amazing. Jance with a $25 tip. Sorry. How's it going, Jance? Thanks for being here. Objection. I've used SQLize, I've used Bookshelf, I've used all the other ones. I have started using Objection for about the past year, and I haven't found a single thing wrong with it. It is awesome. So with SQLize, typically you could potentially create your models, and then SQLize can like generate your database table based off of those models. With Objection, it doesn't have anything to do with your schema. So your schema and your database has to be defined ahead of time, and I like that. So you could define your schema and database with just straight SQL. Hey, ACs, thank you for the 100 bits. You could use straight SQL. You could use a library like Connects, which is another one of my favorite libraries. And then after that, Objection allows you to build the objects and relations that will query that database. They have some really cool things known as like graph fetching. Let's see. What do I want to find? Query examples. Relations? No. Models? No. I don't even know what I'm looking for, honestly. But check out if you don't like any of the other things in the JavaScript ecosystem, check out Objection. It's really good. And personally, I actually don't use TypeScript. So in the latest version, Objection worked with TypeScript, but I've been in the JavaScript ecosystem for a very long time, so I'm used to writing code without IntelliSense. I used to be in the C# world. This is better than browsing Stack Overflow for interesting questions. That's funny. Hey, what's up, Minute Maid Men? We're answering questions, yeah. So you can see, you can go to this website to see the questions that have been asked. And welcome. Thanks for being here. Hey, Nesser. Working on React. Oh, nice. Greetings from Brazil. Is there no slow mode? There should be slow mode. Oh. Well, that's why I'm having a hard time. People are spamming the chat. No, so the last stream I did was I was just opening Pokemon cards, and so there weren't as many people here, so we turned slow mode off. Thanks for reminding me. Nuanuela Robot. I have a question in a previous session regarding View 3 and global variables versus View 2. Oh, no, so all of the older questions aren't here. Only the questions from the past 7 days. So if you haven't asked a question in the past 7 days, you'll need to ask it again. Yeah, no worries, Mr. Wormhole. Hopefully you like it. I've become a an evangelist for Objection because it's pretty sweet. Because I've had so many issues with SQLize and Bookshelf. There's like a few other ones that are they're just not nice. Like they work for some things, but once you start to get into like complex relationships or like you really want to do something custom, it starts to break down. And Objection doesn't. So. No, we're going to do slow mode. We have to. There's 300 people here, and some of you just like to type something and hit enter. Dr. Einstein von Brainstorm. I'm a backend developer. I suck at HTML and CSS. Any advice on how best I can set up my personal website? Use a template. Honestly, if you want it to look good, just find somebody that's built a template, because that way you don't have to worry about it. Also, you could just use a CSS framework, and it'll probably look decent by default. You could use Bootstrap. It's really easy. You could use Bulma. It's also really easy. You basically just add a CSS file, and then everything looks pretty. You can look at their docs to see what kind of components they have, like cards. It's gonna look at that. This is all the code you need. You just copy and paste it and put your data in, and it looks nice and pretty. So I think that's a good place to start to make something look decent. Cool. All right. I was answering this one. Yeah, we've talked about web scraping before. Use the Bootstrap or jQuery. That's the thing. You can find a Bootstrap portfolio template or something like it. It just put your own data inside of it. I think that's totally fine, especially if you're a backend dev and you're not trying to market yourself as like the best CSS developer in the world. Yeah. Yeah. So basically, if you search the web for CSS framework, you'll find an easy way to get going with CSS. Okay, let's answer this. So I've done some videos on scraping. So check out coding.garden/videos, and then just search for web scrap. I've done a ton. Actually, scraping? Scrap. Oh, okay, just search for scrap. Because you'll find scrape the web, web scraping, web scraper, web. Yeah, so this is not like a fuzzy search. So just search for scrap. You'll find one. I would say the most recent stream I did on web scraping it does like a full breakdown of like the tools that I like to use in the Node.js ecosystem for scraping. But I'll talk about them really quick. So first of all, it depends on what you're trying to scrape. Now, if the website is server-side rendered, that means that you can make a simple HTTP request and you're going to get all the data you need to be able to extract it out. So like, for example, Wikipedia is server-side rendered. You make a request to their server, they return back to you a bunch of HTML. And actually, no, we'll use the example, list of US states. This is the example we used in that video that I pointed you to. So like, this web page is server-side rendered. If I look at the source code of it, the Wikipedia server is sending me back a bunch of HTML. And inside of that HTML is this table. So like Alabama should be listed in here. It is, yeah. So a single request to this URL is going to give me back HTML, and then I can write code to parse that HTML and extract out the data I need. If you're dealing with a website that is server-side rendered, easy. You just make the request using your preferred request library, whether it's Axios or Fetch or Got or Request Promise or anything else. Make an HTTP request, and then you need to extract out the pieces of it. And to extract it, I prefer to use Cheerio. It's nice. The syntax looks like jQuery, but this actually can run on the server side. So you write right here where they're saying cheerio.load and they're just passing in a string, basically right before that, make an HTTP request, get back some HTML, pass it in here, and then you can just start selecting elements and pull them out. So I like Cheerio. You could also try JS DOM. It works in a similar way. But instead of jQuery-like syntax, you get DOM-like syntax. So inside of Node.js, you could say document.querySelector and like extract out the data. So there's JS DOM. And then there's a few other libraries that do that. So if the stuff you're scraping is server-side rendered, you just need to request it, and then you need to parse it. So those are some libraries for that. If the stuff you're scraping is not server-side rendered, meaning it's probably like a single-page application, or it's a web page where all of the data isn't on the page when you first load that page, then you have to go down a different route. People typically use something like Puppeteer, because Puppeteer is basically a headless browser. It's a headless Chrome, meaning it can load that web page, wait for all of the JavaScript to run and for the page to render, and then you can start extracting out data. Now, personally, I don't like to do this because it can be really, really slow, because you basically have to wait for all of the... have I been sending links? Oh, well, you could probably find them. But you basically have to wait for the entire page to load. And then after the entire page has loaded, then you can start extracting out stuff. And here's the thing. If a page is a single page application, like it's something that doesn't have all the data on the page initially, there's very likely some undocumented API that the page is making requests to. So instead of using something like Puppeteer, you can just watch the network traffic. You can just go to the website, open up the network tab, and see what requests are being made. Like when you page through the data and see what requests are being made, and you'll potentially see requests to APIs, and then you can just directly use those APIs yourself. Yeah. And so, I mean, that's your process. You got to figure out how you're going to scrape this thing. Then you can use any emailing library. There's Node Mailer is probably the most common one. Emoji script. This is like the most common JavaScript Node library for sending emails. You can just provide it SMTP credentials and it can send emails that way. And then if you want it running nonstop, you can use something like PM2. So PM2 is a process manager. You can just install it with npm, and then you just do PM2 start, and it manages that process. So if for whatever reason the process ever crashes, it will automatically restart the process. You can also configure PM2 to do like cron-like things, where you can say run this script every 30 minutes or every hour, and that script will make the requests, pull out the data, do what you want with it, send an email, and that will be all in one JavaScript program. And that same thing, just you can run it on a schedule. Yeah, I think that's mainly what you're asking. Is there anything else you want to add to that, Bjorn the Dev? What if you want to scrape data which is delivered through WebSockets? You can watch the network traffic as well to see where it's coming from. I mean, let's for example, the Vox website, the Firefox and Chrome come with a WebSocket debugger. So you can click this little WS here on the network tab, and you'll see any request that happens. So you can see when the page loads, it actually makes a WebSocket request to the backend. And then you can see all of the requests and responses. So there's actually a find request when the page is loaded that sends back the list of all the data. And then you can see there's this user's patched event that got sent. So if a user changes their name or changes their picture, or we haven't seen them in 30 minutes, they actually get patched. But those events are coming through here. So this WebSocket debugger is going to allow you to see the traffic, and then you can basically just replicate that WebSocket traffic in your code using a WebSocket client. Look at that. lots of stuff is happening. Is that Insomnia request still open? That's a good question. Who said that? Logic Husky. It is. It's been open for 3,000 seconds. So this is the very first question we answered about an API that streams data. This is not server-sent events. This is not long polling. This is not WebSockets. When you make a request to this server, it just literally never closes the connection, and it just sends new data over the connection whenever it's there. I'm gonna go ahead and cancel that because it's a long time. I think I missed a bunch of stuff, but I gotta keep going. What do I think about storing data locally as a CSV for a simple project like this? Sure. Well, even instead of a CSV, you could use just a local document database. So check out NeDB. NeDB has a very similar API to MongoDB, but it just writes it to a JSON file. So you can do things like create a data store, and then let's look at some queries. So like insert some data into that. Or find some data in that. And this doesn't require any sort of database server. This literally will just be writing a JSON file that is in the folder with all of your data. And I think that's totally fine. You also could use a CSV writer, but this is nice because you can, if you ever need to query it, you can pull it up and do like finds and stuff like that. Whereas a CSV is a bit more static. You'd have to like parse it every time to be able to query it. But yeah. You're adding to that server a $5 bill now. Well, hello, Mikat. Thanks for being here. Why not SQLite? Oh, you could use SQLite as well. This is just nice because you don't have to create a table schema ahead of time. Whereas with SQLite, you need to create a database schema for your SQL database. But it also stores it in a flat file. So SQLite is to MySQL as NeDB is to MongoDB, basically. Have I created a file upload tutorial? No, but I have a feeling if I did, it would be very popular. Fun tool to teach JavaScript in high school. Definitely P5. So you check out the P5 web editor. This allows you to write code that draws stuff. So this is the code required to create a little canvas. I could say like fill 0, and then it should be a black canvas. No. Oh, no, sorry, background. Background 0 should be a black canvas. Cool. And then I can create like a circle, ellipse at 10, 10, and it should be 10 wide and 5. Let's see what that does. Nice. It's tiny. Let's go 100. Oh, no, that's the location. This is the width and the height. There we go. So there's lots of cool built-in functions like ellipse and square, and you can do some awesome stuff. Shout out to Mr. Schiefman of the Coding Train. He has a ton of tutorials on using P5 in the P5 editor, and that playlist right there, beautiful artwork. Oh, thank you, Alka. This is my art. Well, actually, let's make a face. We're halfway there. So we got one ellipse. Let's make another ellipse. So this is the X and the Y. So the Y should be the same, but the X should be more like that. Right? No. Is it Y then X? Oh, no, actually, I think I went too far over. Yeah, there we go. So now we got 2 eyes. And then we need a mouth. Hey, Klein, I'm doing pretty good. Yeah, you're right. I was off the canvas because the canvas is only 400 by 400. And then I'll do a square. There is beautiful documentation for this. I'm just kind of guessing, like X. Yeah, X, and then Y, and then width, or like the size of the square. Let's see what that does. Wrong. Let's look it up. I need an arc. Well, yeah, for like the smile. It's just gonna be a square smile. Let's look at the reference. Square. Draw. So yeah, it's X, Y, and then. Oh, again, I'm too far down. Yeah, there it is. And let's make the width 300. Actually, I guess I want a rectangle. I don't want a square. Because the width should be 300, but the height should only be 50. That's wrong. Oh, it's rect. Rect. Not react, rect. Nice. Cool, and then we need a nose, so let's just draw a triangle. Alright, this is the triangle I want. And it's gonna go right here. Here we go. Ta-da! No, now we need to move it so it's actually a nose. So the X should be 200, the Y should be 200. Let's see what that gives us. That's wrong. Oh, is it the 3 points? It's 3 points, isn't it? Well, I think I'm gonna end it there. It's abstract art. Incline, whoa! 2,750 bits. Thank you very much for the bits. Thank you. I appreciate you. Wait, what just happened? Who sent that message? Oh, your name is wrecked. I was like, how the heck did you do that? How did you do that? That's awesome. Your literal name is wrecked. Yeah, abstract. Yeah, just call anything abstract art and it's fine. Yeah, that would actually make it really easy. Thank you, Zamar Plays. Let's leave the original triangle here. Guess who? I have no idea, but you somehow were able to get the name wrecked on Twitch, so I have a feeling you've been on Twitch for a long time. Yeah, since 2015. Okay, and then so we want to draw the draw the triangle, and then we could do translate. So translate will move before we draw. So what did they just mention? Translate 150, 150. and Klein, did you send a message? Thank you for all those bits. You are very kind. No message, but thank you. Thank you for the bits. Very kind. All right, let's keep answering questions because I don't know. IndexedDB. I haven't actually ever used that. I typically just use like local storage. IndexedDB seems cool though. All right. So people always ask me this, and I don't answer it. So this, I realize some of you may really want to know, like, what do I use as a password manager? But some of you might be trying to social engineer me. And Steeler, thank you for that Twitch Prime sub. I'm not accusing you of anything. I'm just saying I use a password manager, and you should too, but I'm not going to tell you which one I use. All right, let's keep going. If you have asked a question, type exclamation mark here in the chat, and it'll bubble up. That's actually, yeah, that's a good idea. Draw a face with P5 as an interview question. You should actually not use local storage unless you only intend to... Yeah, I guess it's true, because like with local storage, you have to JSON parse it every time. Yeah. Paranoid. I mean, you gotta be. Any tips on where to learn about system design? Not really. I mean, I only learned through doing and like experience, but probably the best place is YouTube. There are a ton of people that are putting out like system design interviews. Actually, yeah, I don't have any resources for that, but YouTube. Definitely check YouTube. Oh, nice. IndexedDB is asynchronous, right? So like if you're reading a ton of data from local storage, it's synchronous and you need to parse it. That makes sense. Can you explain npm eject? So npm eject is typically a thing that you see in a React app. I guess I could show you. What's the last React app we built here on the Coding Garden? 101 ways to deploy. This is not the last one, but all of my repos have pull requests, it looks like, so they're all bubbling up to the top. Why are there 12 pull requests on here? Oh, I mean, that makes sense. Dependabot is telling me, hey, update your dependencies. But for example, if we take a look at this is a React app. It was written 2 years ago, but if you look at the package.json, it's using React scripts. To start it, we say React scripts start. Easy enough. And for a simple app like this, that's all we need. But the thing to note is that this library, React scripts, is actually hiding. Excuse me. It's actually hiding the Webpack configuration. So React scripts has a default Webpack configuration that is managed and maintained and updated by the React team. But if you want to customize that Webpack config, you need access to the Webpack config. So the eject script is something that you would only ever run once. Basically, if you've reached a point where you need to configure the Webpack config, you need to do something custom that isn't supported by default, you'll need to eject. And if you eject, it basically takes all of the Webpack configs that were that are defined by React in the React scripts library, and it puts them in your source code. If you eject, you're dead now. So typically I try not to eject, and there actually are ways of not ejecting. People have written tools that allow you to modify the Webpack config without ejecting, but they're not officially supported. But you cannot uneject, and you'll actually get let me just show you, because you'll get a warning message in the console if you try to do it. Cool. So I guess I need to npm install. There's gonna be a ton of vulnerabilities in this because it was written 2 years ago. My partner says there's a strange package that was delivered by FedEx that says extremely urgent. I kind of want to go see what it is. So only a senior dev should npm eject. I would say that the project owner, if you know that you need to modify the Webpack config, you can eject. But you could also look into. Oh hey, L37E, thank you for that Twitch Prime sub. Oh nice, Avi, that's good to hear. Your Twitch extension has 300 users. Shake it before you open it. Okay, so if I do npm run eject, you're gonna see it. Note, wait, no. Are you sure you want to eject? This action is permanent. It's actually, I remember it being a lot scarier than that. But basically, once you do it, you can't go back. You can't uneject. I mean, technically you could. You could delete those files and then just add the eject script back. But there is no way to like modify the files and then put them back in. You're basically opening Pandora's box. Yeah, and it wants me to stash my changes before I do this, so I'm not going to do that. But I guess I will. I want to show you. So before I do it, right now I just have node modules, my source directory, and public. After I run eject, it's going to create a, I think it's called config. Uncommitted change. Oh, geez. Let's do this. Please. Okay, so. And another thing is all of the dependencies required for that webpack config get added as well. So if you look at this, this is ridiculous. What are we doing with our lives as web developers? All of these dependencies now get added to your project directly. So instead of having React scripts as a dependency, well, you still have React scripts because you need to start it, but you now see all of these dependencies listed because those are required for your webpack config. And then you will see a config folder. Yeah, this is ridiculous. For a single React app, this is ridiculous. How did we allow it to get this way? But if you look at our dev dependencies, yeah, all these, that's insane. But if you look in the config folder, there is now a webpack.config. And you have access to modify it. It's actually heavily commented, so you can learn about it and know where to... Web dev has definitely gone too far. I think web dev had already gone too far by the time I started learning about web dev. But yeah, so that's what eject does. You don't necessarily have to do it. Let's say React modify webpack config without eject. There's a library. I forget what it's called. I'd rather never eject. Proxy require? No, that's somebody doing it manually. There's basically a custom version of React scripts that allows you to modify it. Override create React app. Is it? Yeah, React app rewired. This is the one. This is the one. Yeah, React rewired. In different goats. Got it. Got it. Eact. Eact app. Tweak the create React app webpack configs without using eject and without creating a fork of the React scripts. So this basically allows you to have a little config file like this. You add it as a dependency and then you don't need to eject. So if you ever need to modify the webpack config in a React app, you probably want to use this. Oh, people have mentioned that. GitHub has dark mode now. Let me disable my built-in GitHub dark style. And let me turn it on. Settings, appearance. New. Dark. Oh. Oh, it's actually really nice. Let's see. I'll show you in a second. I like it. It's one of the best dark themes I've ever seen. It is very blue. I like it. It looks good. I'm gonna keep using it. Yeah. So before, I mean, this is new. I was using my own, not that. I was using my own, not my own. I installed a dark CSS theme. But yeah, they did really well. I love it. Let's keep it. Did I close that one? Yeah, so we answered that question. Hopefully that helps. All right, I'm gonna take a quick break while I go open this urgent package, and I don't know. Stay awesome. I'll be back in 5, 10, maybe. I don't know, depending on how urgent this package is. Call 911. Yeah, I'll be back soon. Let me get something ready really quick. Not gonna open it on screen. Heck no, I have no idea what's inside. Heck no. All right, see ya, Alka. Thanks for hanging out with us. Have a good sleep. What was I gonna do? Oh yeah, I'm gonna get the break screen ready. If it's something cool, I'll show you all. I have no problem with that. But I'm not going to risk showing you without knowing what it is. All right, I'll be back in 5. I'll leave you with some music. Be nice to each other, and see you soon. Hello. I'm back. So this extremely urgent package was actually just an Amazon package, but it was labeled as urgent for some reason. But I'll show you what it is. Here, it is hardback card protectors. I ordered these to protect my Pokemon cards. So that's what we got. But I think it's a sign, everybody. I think it's a sign. I think because we just got these and it said urgent, it means we need to open a pack of Pokemon cards. So that's what we're going to do right now. This is urgent. It means that one of these packs of Pokemon cards contains a very rare card so that we can put it into the card protector, and it's that one. That's the one. So let's open it. Priority. Okay, so if you tuned in, what was it, Tuesday? Wednesday? I opened a bunch of Pokemon cards. I'm getting back into Pokemon card collecting. I did it when I was a kid, and I am currently trying to complete 3 different sets. So Vivid Voltage is the Glaceon incoming. Vivid Voltage is the latest expansion of Pokemon. It is extremely sought after. Oh, somebody might have gotten that code. Oh, it's fine. You can have this code. This code is for this Grookey. Whoever wants the Grookey, you can have it. Here's the code. There you go. But yeah, Vivid Voltage. It's the latest expansion. It's sought after because it's the holiday season. It's a limited print. It's got some really cool cards. Basically, people are buying these things up like crazy, and they're very hard to find. I'm collecting this. I'm trying to catch them all. Trying to collect that entire set, and then also I'm trying to collect Rebel Clash, which is actually much easier to come by. You can find them at most stores, so that's an achievable goal for me, is to collect all the Rebel Clash expansion. And then I'm also collecting XY Evolutions, which is a 2016 expansion, but they look like the original Pokemon cards. And I've thought about this. Are these cards going to go in the inventory app? I don't know, but let's open this up. I kind of want to build some sort of like card tracker. There are existing apps that let you track cards. They're not all ideal. We could build a better one. True. All right. Here we go. Basically a Pokédex, but for cards, yeah. The thing about it is, these days, what was I going to say? They have multiple versions of cards. You have like a common card, and then you have a reverse holo of the same card, or you have a rare card and a reverse holo of the card, or you have a rare card and a holo of the card. So it's a lot harder to keep track of all the cards. Oh, buddy. So the promo card has a green stripe on it, meaning there is a holographic rare card in this set. So here's what we do. We take the top 4. And that card right there is the rare card of this pack. And then you have to guess the energy. Is it grass? Is it electric? Is it leaf energy? Is it psychic energy? Is it metal energy? Is it... Well, there's no fairy energy in this expansion. I think that's it. Grass. Oh, it's fire. All right, here we go. First up, we've got an Alistair Trainer. Next up, we've got a Cramorant, a Nessa Trainer, very good. We've got an Eevee, a Seedot, Electrike, a Clefairy, a Phanpy, a reverse holo Chatot. Now, up until this point, I already have all of these cards. All of these cards are already in my collection. Let's hope that the rare is not in my collection. Here we go. Nice. I don't have this. It's a holographic Xerneas. Nice. Look at it. It's not a super rare card, but that was a fun pull. Thank you all for participating. All right, now back to coding. Did you all have fun? I had fun. Here. So I'm going to be answering questions for about 30 more. Yeah, nice little breaks. I'm going to be answering questions for about 30 more minutes. If you're just joining us, you're right. It's still not enough cards to beat Bob. Bob is really good, and he has a bunch of like super rare cards. Cool. Yeah, we answered this one a bit ago. If you're just joining us and you want to ask a question, you can do !ask it in the chat followed by your question. It'll show up on this website. Let's go. Let's answer a non-sub question. This one comes from One Line of Me. Can we have an example on how to scrape a website made with React? Can you give me an example of a website made with React that I could try scraping? The thing is, what I would show you is that React app is talking to an API. That React app is talking to a GraphQL API or a REST API. So we likely could figure out the undocumented endpoints and just call those instead of needing to scrape it. So does anybody, or One Line of Me, do you have an example of a website that was built with React that has data on it that you want to get out of it? Oh, you asked this at the same time as the other person? Is that what you mean? I mean, or you, yeah. So if you asked it at the same time, I'm gonna have to go over it again. What is this website? Did you make it? Is it okay to show on screen? On stream? Let's go here just to be safe. Banned. So it's kitchen designs and appliances. Is this a website that you worked on? Cool. Let's see really quick. Cool. Honestly, I'll just show you. You work on their mobile app. Oh, okay, cool. So I'll show you. So this is basically what I was talking about. And someone asked, 0216 Johnson just said, React is JSX, can you scrape JSX? So you write a React app with JSX, but at the end of the day, all of that code gets transpiled into code that the web browser can understand, meaning HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. So this website, while it was written with React, is actually just a collection of HTML, CSS, and JavaScript files. That's all it is. However, if we load the website, you'll notice that there's like a loading spinner, and then all of this stuff kind of comes in. And if we look at the source of the web page, like if I do this, it's been minified. Let's unminify it. Unminify HTML. Here, I'm just going to throw it in here. There's tools built into VS Code that will do it, but let's look at it. So it's got some meta tags, some links to some script tags. We've got links to some CSS, links to some JavaScript, probably some like polyfill code, and that's it. So in that file, we see nothing about monsoon sale or modern classic looks. Like we don't actually see the content of the web page. We just see the things required to make the web page work. And so it's very likely that like this main JavaScript file actually kicks in and then makes a request to an API and does all these things. So what I'm going to show you is I actually would not web scrape this. What I would do is I would find the API that it's calling and just call that API myself. Then I don't have to do any scraping. And I mean, this is a kitchen home website, so they probably don't have a public API. I mean, I could search their webpage for API. I don't see anything, but what I'm going to show you is if we go to the network tab, we can filter by XHR. So XHR is XML HTTP request. So this will show you all the requests that the web page is making. Not necessarily that it's protected, just that it is not publicly documented. So I'm going to filter by XHR, and then I'm going to refresh the page. So here it comes. And let's just look at this first one that was made. So this is a request that was a post request made to this endpoint. Excuse me. And hey, Jim McDonald, I hope you're having a good day as well. Thanks for being here, and thanks for that resub. So it hits a post request to this URL, and then if you look at the response, it's just some JSON data. So we can see, look at that, category name, modern classic looks, category description. title image. Yeah, so it's coastal kitchen. We have like a bunch of data in here. Is it the data we want? I don't know. I don't know why we would be scraping this website, but basically this is all the data that's used by this website that we might want to scrape. So really all I need to do is I need to replicate this HTTP request in my code, and then I get that data. There's no need to use a scraping tool or a headless browser or anything like that. So what if an API requires passing a token that is computed by obfuscated JavaScript code? You either deobfuscate it, or you could do one render in a headless browser that generates the code, and then just reuse that code in non-headless browser code. Yeah, so you could just do a fetch. And like one thing you can do is you could actually just right-click this and say copy as fetch, and that will literally give you fetch code to replicate this HTTP request. One issue is if it requires authentication, but I mean, I'm curious, what actually did we send? And hey, in Blanky, I think for that Prime resub, it's been some time. I'm doing pretty good today. So it's actually just a post request to this endpoint. Let me show you in Insomnia. So all we got to do is make a post request. Oh, I didn't mean to do that. No environment. New request. Example. So if we make a post request to this URL, do we just get back the data? We do. Look, no tokens required. So for this specific example, I wouldn't use a headless browser. I would just figure out the endpoints, and now I could write code against this URL. Now, if it required authentication, you might have to figure out how that token was getting created, or you actually could go in here and you could look at the request headers and see if they're sending like a token or a cookie, and then you could just copy and paste that and use that there. Why is it a post request? It shouldn't. You're right. It shouldn't be a post request. This should be a GET request. This is not modifying any data. The body is empty. I don't know. Whoever wrote it. But that's what I'm talking about when I say undocumented API. It's basically there is no documentation because it's not meant to be a public API, but technically, if it has data that you need, you could use it potentially in your app, barring that it doesn't go against any of the terms of service of whatever website you're using. Is it bad practice to not have your API protected with some kind of token? I think in this example, it's totally public data, right? It's the same data you see when you go to that website. So for that particular endpoint, it's not protected. If there are protected pages on the website with protected data, those are probably behind some sort of authentication, and that would require a token. But yeah, if something should be secret, you definitely want it behind some sort of authentication and authorization so people can't just request it all day long. Yeah. What about saving chat messages on local storage like WhatsApp? I'm not sure what you mean by that. All right, am I excited for the proposal temporal API for JavaScript dates? I don't know if I've even seen it. Let's see. Temporal date and time in JavaScript today. Can you give me some... Here it is. Here's the TC39 proposal. Okay. Date has been a long-standing pain point in ECMAScript. This is a proposal for temporal, a global object that acts as a top-level namespace, like math, that brings a modern date and time API to the ECMAScript language. First of all, I think it's interesting. I think if you look at the history of it, for the longest time, the TC39 committee, so this is the committee of people that decide and agree on what's going to be added to JavaScript. They've basically said that the kinds of things that we're doing with date libraries should be in user land things. They shouldn't be built into the language itself. And I mean, things like date functions. This is my preferred date parsing and manipulating library. I like it. Works well. Moment is probably the one that most of you have heard of, but I'll have to search for moment.js. But it modifies I believe it pollutes the date prototype It does some things. It does some things that you don't usually like in modern JavaScript. There was an answer to that, which is Luxon. It's built by the same team as Moment, but it has a like non-mutable API. I don't know if is Moment deprecated. Might be, but regardless, you have options. And I kind of like that, but let's look at the API that they provide. So get the exact time, get the time zone, plain date. A date without a year component. That's pretty cool. Duration expresses a length of time. See the duration document. Let's look at duration. That's pretty cool. So this is like the ISO 860 is a specification for how you specify durations. A lot of APIs actually use these, like the YouTube API, and it gives you back the duration of a YouTube video in this format. 40 days, a year and a day, 3 days, 3 days, 40 hours, and 59 minutes. So this, you take in some items, and that gives you back a duration string. That's pretty cool. I'm sure it could probably parse it as well. Yeah. So you can do duration.from, pass it in. That's nice. It's nice to have these. I don't know if I'm excited for it. I'll say it seems interesting, and I guess it's cool that we won't need a separate library, but at the same time, this is an entire API service that we would need to learn anyways. Like in my code base, I'd have to find all the date functions that I'm using, and then I'd have to figure out what's the corresponding way of doing it the built-in way, and then convert my code. Whereas I'm fairly familiar with date functions and what they provide, so seems cool. I'm not super excited. That's my answer. All right, if you have asked a question, type !mark here in the chat, and it will bubble up to the top. I will say that I've coded in C# 6 years ago, I coded in C# for about 4 years, so I know it, but I haven't used it in a long time. And hello, Codephobia. Moment is quite a bit bigger than date functions and is deprecated. Lighthouse will now suggest using date functions. Oh, that's cool. So yeah, Lighthouse is the accessibility audit that you can do in Chrome, I think, and it tells you to use date functions. That's awesome. Yeah. Have I looked into VizX from Airbnb? It's over D3. I haven't, but Airbnb has created a bunch of really cool stuff. They also created VizGL, or is that what it's called? It's a MapGL library for React, but they made it, and I'm using it in a project. But shout out to Codephobia. Check him out. Oh, he was last playing Among Us. That sounds fun. All right. Let's keep going. Is it possible to get Twitch user profile image without a client ID? Not that I know of. Not unless you're potentially finding some undocumented endpoint. For the most part, every request to the Twitch API, as far as I know, requires a client ID. And in the newer endpoints, it actually requires an auth token as well. So that's a thing. But so if you're using it like in front-end code, it's actually okay to expose your client ID. There isn't really anything too malicious somebody could do with just a client ID. They would need the client secret as well. Where are we? Twitch user image. There we go. All right, we're going to jump to a non-sub question now. This one comes from Kapur. Is it a good idea to lazy load an entire React route? Absolutely. I'll just start this one. So yeah, absolutely. So the idea behind lazy loading is you only load in the browser and the client only gets what they need and when they need it. So let's say somebody goes to your homepage and you also have like a dashboard for logged in users. You have a dashboard for admins. You have a bunch of pages that somebody who's on the homepage doesn't necessarily care about. It makes a whole lot of sense to lazy load those routes, because when somebody comes to the homepage, they don't have to download all of those assets. They just get the homepage stuff. And then when they click to log in, or when after they log in and they're being redirected to the dashboard, that's when all of the scripts and everything for that specific route will get loaded in. So it's a good optimization technique to make your initial page loads faster and to not send JavaScript to users that don't necessarily need it. So Yes. These are actually brown switches. Yeah. Hello, Real Demore. Why is it called lazy and not smart loading? Because it's lazy. It waits till the last second and only does it when it needs to. It is smart. I'll say that. So I don't think they Create React App does it by default, because Create React App doesn't actually even include React Router. You would have to set that up yourself. But the thing that will let you lazy load is Webpack. So you could do a lazy loaded import, and Webpack will take care of lazy loading that asset. So you could lazy load the import of a component, and then whenever you need to use it, it would, and Codephobia saying Angular has that built in. In Vue, it's also not a Vue thing, it's just a Webpack thing. So you basically just do a lazy loaded Webpack import, and that automatically does the lazy loading for you. Okay. Next non-sub question comes from Creepin' Death. I'm trying to build a node backend that's a combination of REST and WebSockets. Wait. Okay. Do you know how to implement a WebSocket endpoint on a router? I think you're thinking about this in the wrong way. So there actually is a way to like write code that works for both and combine them, but your WebSocket code and your WebSocket events are totally separate from your RESTful routes. Yeah. I want to run both REST and WebSockets on the same port. I want to create separate endpoints for API/REST and another for API/WebSocket. I'm trying to build the WebSocket endpoint using express.router, and I'm hitting a wall. Yeah, I think it's you basically your WebSocket connection endpoint is just at the root of your server anyways. So are you using Socket.io? Because typically with Socket.io, it's just the root of your server, and it takes care of like the upgrade that like Codephobia is talking about. Like it takes care of the client connection and all of that. Yeah, I mean, I'll also mention that like this kind of brings up the idea of feathers, because feathers allows you to write your code in one way and then expose that same code over REST or WebSockets. And with this, it just takes care of all of that for you. And basically, like a particular endpoint is accessed as a service with a specific WebSocket event that has a name tied to that service. But if you're doing it yourself from scratch, using the WS library, I'll just say I don't know. It's okay to not know, and I don't know. I'll also say that I think you might be thinking about this in the wrong way. Like, I think just basically separate those two out in your mind. You could absolutely write reusable code, right? You could write code in functions that are used in both your WebSocket responses and in your RESTful routes. So basically, like that, separate out the common code that can be called from both, but then just think about them in two separate ways. You set up your events with your sockets, and you set up your endpoints with REST, and then they both can call the same functions that do the similar functionality. Because typically a client WebSocket connection is just going to connect to the root of your host. It's not going to connect at API/WebSocket. That's my answer. Hopefully it helps. Basically, I'm telling you, don't overcomplicate it. Just do it. Yeah, that makes sense, Codephobia. Like, basically, to talk to a Socket.io backend, you kind of need a Socket.io client, which is not that bad. It just formats the messages in a certain way. So I'm answering the questions as they came in, and they're also arranged by number of votes. So people that have more votes, I'm answering those questions first. All right, back up to a sub question. Have I heard of Snowpack? What do I think about it? We found it the other day. It seems pretty cool. We were talking about we ended up using Parcel, but Snowpack seems cool. It seems similar to Parcel. I don't know if I have a use for it yet, but Snowpack is cool. That's what I'll say. Next question from Bjorn. What's your favorite project you've ever worked on whilst streaming? I don't know. They're all fun. It's always fun. Cat walked on my keyboard for the last two characters. No, it's always been fun. Like working on the inventory app and what do we call it? Entropy chat. Those were fun. We obviously I haven't worked on those in a while. And I guess I wouldn't call them my favorite because we haven't gone back to them. I don't know. Nothing's my favorite. Everything gets old, so we got to move on to new stuff. That's my answer. Are Electron apps considerably slower than native ones? It depends. So, they're larger. Like the install size and the bundle size is potentially larger. What happened here? Why is everything so small or big? Cooper says yes, they are. I'll say it's relative. You can write an Electron app that works just fine and is just fast enough. Slack, used by millions of people every day, is an Electron app. Discord, used by millions of people every day, is a Electron app. VS Code, Atom, all of these things use that technology. And even something like VS Code that does native things, like accessing files and stuff like that, it can do it without being a direct native app. So I'd say it's relative. I would say if your app is slow, it's probably just your slow JavaScript. I would say they're heavy. They're heavy in that it's a large download, but not necessarily slow. It depends on what the coder has done in the app to make it slow. But if you want truly native performance, build a native app. There's no replacement for just building a straight native app. Okay. This was from earlier, from Amr. Would I rather fight 100 duck-sized horses or one horse-sized duck? One horse-sized duck. So I would assume that if I'm fighting, I potentially get some sort of weapon, right? And I could potentially take down a horse-sized duck with a weapon of sorts. If you have 100 ducks coming at you, they're attacking you from all angles, right? You can't really manage that kind of attack. So I'm gonna go with one horse-sized duck. Thank you for the question. And Codephobia says Blazor is making an Electron competitor, but the trade-off is that it uses your default browser within it. Yeah, we talked about 100 small horses. We talked about this earlier with different desktop options. And there's something similar that exists in node.js called DeskApp. And it does just that. And there's a few others. So DeskApp, Neutralino, and Electrino, all of these use the native browser of your device rather than embedding Chromium. But these allow you to use the JavaScript ecosystem. Which weapon would I choose? I don't know. I was going to say like a sword, but I don't know how to use a sword. I've watched movies and TV shows where they use swords, but I have no idea how to yield a sword. Yeah, if you're really questioning the efficacy of Electron, just look at all the apps that use Electron. Yeah. Spear. I like that. Yeah, from a distance. Well, actually, no, I would use a crossbow. I feel like, because with the spear, you got to be good at throwing things. I'm not that athletic. So with a crossbow, you just click a button and it goes. It goes. So, a loaf of bread. All right, let's keep going. This question's from Razor. Wait, Razor, are you voting on your own questions? Are you voting on your own? Who voted for Razor's questions? Wait, didn't I add a feature where I could click these? Yes. Don't do that. When do I think is Vue 3 ready for production? I think it's ready now. There's most of the popular libraries in the Vue ecosystem are already compatible. So like Vuetify is now compatible with Vue 3. Vue Router is out of a release candidate and has full support for Vue 3. If Vuex isn't out of alpha, beta, or release candidate yet, they're probably very close to it. So I would say now's the time to start using Vue 3. Yeah. I'm not that athletic. What's the best way to explain someone how this is used in JavaScript? From Miss It's Ryan. They have to understand the idea of an instance, right? So it kind of gets into well, it's not necessarily always object-oriented programming, right? So it's the current context in the instance. However, you can also use this, well, I mean, this comes into play with just functions as well. Or does it? I mean, it does, but in the context of an instance and a method, right? Here's the thing. If you use functional programming, you don't have to use this. That's my answer. Yeah, just don't use this. Yeah, I would say it's typically used for the most, I would say try to understand it in the context of object-oriented programming. So in JavaScript, you can create an instance of a class or an instance of a constructor function, and then that class or constructor function can have methods on it, and those methods are reusable by all instances of that class. Now, if I just said a bunch of words that you don't understand, like class and instance and all that, those are things you're going to need to understand before you can attempt to understand something like this. And also, you'll hear the term context, but context is the current instance. There's a lot of concepts. I would say, search YouTube. You'll find somebody that can answer it better than me just mumbling about it here. Yeah. Remember that little Minecraft I wrote? That did. Oh, we talked about why this is when to use this. Yeah, I'll show that really quick. That was a good example. We did that in an AMA session. Where did that? Didn't we do that in an AMA session? Does anybody see it? It should be a folder here. Oh, we did it in Y arrow functions. Yeah, because basically with arrow functions, you don't have to use this. Well, actually, I mean, you still use this, but there's a whole lot of this here. But I can use this code to explain it really quick. Okay, so, but again, this is in the context of object-oriented programming. Your code may not be written this way, and you still might be using this in it. But in any case, we have this class called player. You think of a class as like a description of something. It's a blueprint. Basically, you define and describe how the thing should work in a general way, right? But that's just the blueprint and the description. Now we want to create a bunch of players, right? So we've defined how a player works. Now I want to create a bunch of players. So I have player CJ, and so that's where you see this new keyword. It's creating an instance of that player. But I could create player 2 that has the name one line of me. And now that is another instance of player. Now they're similar in that they have the same things that they can do. They both have an inventory. I believe they both have methods for taking a step in the world or eating food. Like players can do that, but these are two totally separate players. Classes are just syntactic sugar for constructor functions, so you could call them an afterthought. Yeah. Cool. So this, when I say instance, that's what I mean. We have the description of how a player should work, and now we can create multiple instances of that player. Now, in the code I wrote up here for this player, when I say player2.tick or player1.tick or player 1.take a step or player 2.take a step or player 1.eat or player 2.eat, each time I call that method, it needs to be in the context of who called it, right? So when I say player 1.eat, I want the hunger value of player 1 to go down, but it shouldn't touch the hunger value of player 2 and player 3, right? They're totally separate. Similarly, if I say player 3.eat, it should not affect the hunger levels of player 1 and 2. So each of these is an instance, and our methods operate on each of those instances. They operate on each of those contexts. Hey, ecoder, ahoy. So, for example, when I create an instance of a player, it has a name, it has is dead, it has hunger, it has damage, it has inventory. For each instance I create, they all get their own little properties, and they're all separate. They don't interfere with each other. So when I say player.tick, meaning like the world is moving one step forward, that player's hunger increases. If that player's hunger reaches a threshold, that player is dead, but that specific player, not the other player, is dead, that player. And similarly, all their inventory goes down by a certain amount of damage because the bread starts to go stale. But you can see in these functions, I'm using the this keyword because it means that specific instance. So I create multiple instances, but when I say player1.tick, the code inside of it is only operating on player 1. When I say player2.tick, the code inside of it is only operating on player 2. All right, I'm done talking about that. I said way too many words, but hopefully maybe that made this in classes and instances click for some people. Oh, I think I got rid of it. It's gone. All right, I only have time for like 2 more questions. So, have I tried making a game? Does game development interest me? I haven't made like a legitimate game. I mean, I've made like little small browser games and stuff like that. I haven't really worked with a web game engine. I've used Unity before. I'm just not really that interested in games. I don't play mini games. I don't know. Yeah. Just when you see JavaScript is similar to C#, you see that. Yeah. Oh, cool. Yeah. First time you understand classes. Great. Then I've done my job for at least one person. Why do people hate global variables? Is it worth always putting an array in the function like call like foo array, or is it better to make the array global? The reason people don't like global variables is because it makes the code hard to reason about. Now, people have issue with even saying, what does it mean to be hard to reason about? But if you have a bunch of global variables, it's hard to keep track of who is accessing and who is modifying those global variables, right? So you let's say you define a global variable and now you have like 10 different functions. When does that global variable change? Like, was it changed here? Was it changed here? Was it accessed here? Was it accessed there? So that's the main reason people don't like global variables, is because it potentially creates messy code that is hard to follow. Now, can you write good code with global variables? Yeah, sure. Like, why not? It's possible, but it's also very easy to not do that, which is why people prefer to have things scoped. Especially for, like, if you think about in the web browser, like everything is by default, everything's in the global scope, meaning all the functions you write, all the things you define, if you're not using modules, are defined globally, which is why in the early days, not early days, few years ago, when people were writing JavaScript things, they would put them in immediately invoked function expressions, ifs, because when they put their code in there, any variables they define are not global variables. They're variables that are scoped to that function, so it prevents them from polluting other people's code. So that's the other thing about global variables, is your code may not play nice with other code that you bring in later. But some global variables are good. Like a user object that's used throughout your entire app, that could be a global. And when you think about it, like in modern web development, where we have this idea of global state, aren't they Dotty and Vivar some kind of global variables? In a way, yes, they're your environment variables that are accessible anywhere in your app. You absolutely should not use those as things that get modified and passed around. It's a good place to store constants, like things that like configuration. But I mean, technically, yeah, process.env is accessible in the global scope in anything that you're in. But yeah. Like in Advent of Code, is it bad to always put the input as a global variable? I would say not for Advent of Code, because it's just a challenge. You don't have to worry about your code being clean. But yeah, in those instances, I think it's fine. It's totally fine, because your code is focused on that one specific problem. You're not doing a bunch of other stuff, so it makes sense to have that one global variable. But it all comes down to like context. Yeah, you can use ifs. Basically, an ify is a way of creating a scope on the fly in JavaScript. Yeah, you're welcome, Bob. Hopefully that helped out. All right, one more question. And Acid Spark says, I just throw my data into var my data. If it works, it works. If I were to make a programming language, what would it be called and what features would it support? What would the syntax be like? That's a great question that I probably want to take longer to think about before I answer, but I have been using C-style languages for so long that I think it would be a C-style language. Like I came up in Java, which is a C-style language. That's like my first programming language. I did C# professionally. That's a C-style language. Now I'm doing JavaScript, which is a C-style language. Basically, any language that has like plus and plus equals and curly braces and like if statements written in the way that we're accustomed to seeing in JavaScript, that's a C-style language. They're all inspired by C. And so that's what I'm used to. I haven't really thought about what would make it better. I mean, and that's where a lot of other programming languages came from, because like they're like Python. I don't know if this is exactly the case, but they might have thought, oh, that's so verbose. Like, why do we need curly braces and semicolons everywhere? Why can't we just use white space to denote those things that we're using all that extra syntax for? And so that was the creator of Python, potentially. I don't know, I could be making that up, but that's potentially a thought that went through their head why they decided to create it. I don't know, I'm good with what I got, and I don't have many complaints. I guess that's my answer. So yeah, if I were to create one, it would be C-style, a C-style language. Can I show you your Visual Studio config? For sure. If you type !VS Code in the chat, or !FAQ, you can get to my frequently asked questions. On the FAQ, you can see a link to my theme and a link to my font, but that also links over to my VS Code settings. And so this has all the extensions that I use, and then it also has my settings JSON, which modifies my theme a little bit. And then you can also see my keyboard shortcuts. Cool. All right, I think we're done. If I didn't answer your question, I'm sorry. Come back next time. Come back next time. Oh, I'll answer this one because it's about me. What motivates you about coding more than anything else? Game dev got me into it at an early age, and now problem solving makes me sleep better at night. But what's my exciting motivator? I think that's the thing. Like, when I was in university, the majority of people there, they're all like, oh, I want to be a game developer. I really like games. I want to make games. I just want to create, not just games. I want to create anything. Like, being able to code allows you to create something from nothing, right? It's very easy to just sit down and like you have an idea, you have something that you want to do, you can just make it happen. And also, it's all digital. You don't have to pay anything for the most part. We live in a world with a ton of like open source and the ability to like use different languages and libraries. Really, all you got to do is install them, and then you can start using and building things with them. So I think that's my main motivator, is just build things. Like, it's fun to create. We're basically creating tiny little worlds every time we create a little program, and that's my driving factor. Thank you for your question. That's a great way to end the show. I appreciate you all for being here. We're going to raid somebody, so stick around for that. Who are we going to raid? I don't know. But wherever we go, show them lots of love. Drop a follow if you like what they're doing. And I am now putting in the chat your raid messages. So if you're a sub, use that one. If you're a non-sub, use that one. You can go there to copy the raid messages. This was fun. Thanks for being here. Next stream is planned for Monday, but we might open some Pokemon cards this weekend. So follow if you're interested in that kind of thing. Alrighty, everyone. Wherever you are in the world, have a wonderful morning, afternoon, evening, or night. And until next time, here is this.
Oh, the Coding Garden raid! How's it going, Coding Garden? Good to see you. My viewers should check out Coding Garden. You somehow, I don't know how you wouldn't know Coding Garden, because he's like a celebrity in the science and tech category. But welcome, raiders. How are y'all doing today? What were you working on, Coding Garden? It's good, it's good. That's great. Thank you, Aaron Kanar, for the follow. Welcome to the stream. Hopefully you are all doing well. I really love your emotes there. Although, can't you make those with just the normal characters as well? Does that allow people that are... Oh, look, you can get people that are not subs with the same emotes. That's clever. I like that. Oh yeah, my overlays. We made those on stream. I need to improve them a little bit because the dots should be animated and then it should show the thing at the end. But you know, I haven't had time to brush up on my CSS animations to get that working. But I'll do that at some point. But welcome. What were you working on, Coding Garden? Oh, I guess I should, tell you a little bit about myself and what I'm working on as well. So my name is Anthony. I do a lot of